And then I went across to Saudi Arabia in 2022 and I was sort of the air boss for the Formula One there in Jeddah. It was a second Formula One that they'd held there, and it really put into stark contrast. What I saw was in mid-range 2021, they said, we want to hold the Formula One here. And then November that same year, they held the first Formula One, the last race of the season. And so they built a track and the infrastructure. When I got there at the beginning of the year, they were holding the first race of the year in 2022. The track was built, but all of the buildings, bar one, were temporary buildings, 3 to 4 stories tall. That's put $5 billion into, so $2 billion New Zealand to build this track, where they're only going to hold it there for another 4 years, so 4 to 5 years of that, and then they're going to move it to Riyadh. Now, I sort of looked at that and I was like, man alive, that is some serious alignment and unity of command to make some decisions. We'd never be able to do that in New Zealand, and I don't know about Australia. And I sort of took a step back and I thought, hey, what's that mean for the ability to move a country forward economically? And it means that they'd start to become a bit of a powerhouse, especially if they've got a long-term view and strategic view, which you can sort of see a country, put aside the human rights issues that are there, but they are forging, they've got a sharp arrowhead of where they are going. So then you sort of overlay that to what Trump wants, and then you come back to New Zealand. I'm not saying that in any way, shape or form that our government is aligned with the Saudi or way of doing things, but the frustration of the lack of planning and the lack of long-term planning versus and the ability to get things done in a time frame, because as we know that infrastructure, being able to build infrastructure, it's never cheaper as it is today. And the longer it takes, for us getting the nip-on clip-ons for our harbour bridge were 50 years of discussion, crazy. So the price just ballooned.
Whereas in Saudi, they just make it happen.
Yeah, so
they make a decision, they make it happen. And
so
I was going to say, obviously different forms of government.
Yeah. So what are you seeing in Australia? Is there that appetite to get rid of the bureaucracy and make things happen faster, or is there actually, we need to follow?
No, everyone's over it, mate. We're too woke. We're seeing, you talk about infrastructure, you see it in, we're here in Brisbane in Queensland, where we've got one major project, which is 2 years overdue and billions of dollars over budget. And that's due to a number of reasons. Unions are one of them. They're probably the biggest problem we have in this country are unions, which are now just infiltrated by criminals, bikie gangs and criminals. They had their place years ago, unions, not anymore. You're getting a person holding a stop-go sign or a form worker on $250,000 a year. Tell me how that works, and tell me how that aligns with the real people in middle Australia and lower income Australia who look at the select few, it was supposed to be, for the people, and they're not. But mate, it's delaying projects. But making decisions around projects, the Olympics is another big one, mate. We're supposed to be having the Olympics here in Brisbane in 2032. This current government, now there's a state election coming up here in Queensland in October the 26th. The incumbent government, for those who aren't aware of Queensland politics, they've been in power for 9 years. In this country, we vote governments out, we don't vote them in. So they've had their turn. The debt that has been racked up with nothing to show for it is astronomical. Now, that always happens under a Labor government here in Australia, Conservative governments, they build the war chest up, which is great. Labor governments come in, they spend it. On the right things, I don't think so. But that's my personal opinion. But you have a look at the Olympics here, mate. We're supposed to be having it here in a few years. We haven't even settled on a stadium. The one that they say they're going for is, it's kindergarten compared to what we've just seen in Paris. What's that going to cost? An absolute ton to build, because there's been no proper planning. There's no foresight as well about what legacy is that going to leave for the community. They're just thinking about 2 weeks. There's a running track there. We'll put a lick of paint on it. Off you go. It's going to cost the same as giving a world-class facility to the people of Southeast Queensland. But then what goes around that as well is the infrastructure. So the rail, the hospitals. We're supposed to be building 20 new hospitals here in Queensland. Where's the labour coming from? Where's the supply coming from? Where are the materials coming from? And this is all, it's all death by bureaucracy, because people are sitting on their hands, making the wrong decisions, or making decisions that aren't in the best interests of the taxpayer. They're in the best interests of some stakeholders, which it's really, really disappointing. Saudi is a good example, as you well know. They made a decision to set up, I think now I might have the number wrong here, but I think it's 35 AME bases across the country, supported by 400 helicopters for medical evacuation to help their growing health needs, which they've looked to in the future, going, we've got a growing population, people are going to move into Saudi, let's invest in this now. Different model, different treasury, obviously, but they've got that vision, to be able to do things. We can't do that here. Yeah, China does the same. We can't do that here. So I don't know what we.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it comes from saying, hey, we're going to put on the Olympics and it's going to be world class, and here is our budget, and then coming to say, someone like yourself, Todd, and going, I want you to make this happen, project manage this, and lead us through it, and that's and everyone, when they come to, hey, these are the people that we need to support this, right? Everyone's going to get in behind, and you need that leadership right from the top. And it's actually easy to say, and it's hard to do, because all of the little subgroups which want to push their agenda forward or get a little bit of slice of the pie, and it's actually, you've got to be brutal about the prioritization. And so that comes from, vision, mission, and then cascading those down, just like any good sort of military plan or project plan, having the right lines of effort, and just being ruthless about, hey, sorry, that doesn't meet it. We'd love to, but sorry, not this time around. And once you sort of get that, you'll be ahead. And that's what drives sort of some of those authoritarian countries to then go, right, hey, make this happen and make it so. And unfortunately, like if you don't make it so, it's pretty brutal for those that don't make it so. And we're fortunate that we don't have that in Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, there's a lot for. Well, one of my colleagues actually had dinner with your new Prime Minister last week whilst in Sydney, and he regaled some personal stories. But one around the education system. So we're talking about decision making and being hamstrung by bureaucracy. The story that was relayed to me was that the Prime Minister said, right, no mobile phones in any schools at all. For any kids, they're evil. The bureaucracy said, okay, Prime Minister, well, we'll need 18 months to do up a plan and consultation. And he supposedly said, you've got 30 days. That's it. So he's running it like a business. He's running it almost authoritarian. Got to be done. And the other around your maths curriculum. I didn't know this, but supposedly, unfortunately, in the OECD, New Zealand is one of the lowest performing with maths education in the OECD. He's said to the bureaucracy, we're bringing in the Singaporean maths education system. And again, it's going to take a few years, Prime Minister. We'll have to do some modelling. We're starting it on 1 January, no questions. Now, that is how you get things done. We're not cutting hands off or cutting heads off. Like they might do in other countries if you don't get things done. But it needs that level of direction and leadership. And I think that's if there's a change of government in the US, there's pros and cons, obviously. Some of the cons, I think, for us in this region here, and we've seen it, mate, is in recently, especially with the AUKUS agreement, both the US and the UK have pulled out the whole, we can pull out of this with 1 year's notice if we want to. Now, that should be ringing alarm bells. That is a real concern. If Trump wins the election as well, he's going to be wanting more from his partners. And if we can't provide that, which I don't think we can as Australia or New Zealand, be it the provision of platforms, whether it's sending P8s further afield or contributing maritime assets to a certain project. No, we're back to the dark ages. I don't know what we're going to do, but
that's great. But you're going to have to, like for AUKUS, you're going to have to pony up cash, right? And you're going to have to do it in a reasonable time frame. And you're lucky that you've got pretty serious resources tucked away underneath the lovely dirt of yours across there. We're struggling a little bit more in New Zealand with those resources, but the resources comes in our personnel capital, right? And as you touch on education, I'm on the board of trustees here of a state integrated school. We're really lucky. We've got a great principal, and we've put in the Singaporean math system a couple of years ago, and we're seeing fantastic results as a result of putting in that system. When you go back to the curriculum changes, the Ministry of Education has 1,000 people in there dealing to the curriculum, and then they're saying, here are the curriculum principles. Schools, you have to come up with the lesson plans yourself. If you're changing the curriculum, they should be designing the curriculum based on international best practice. Here are the cascading right down to the lesson plans. Here you go, schools. Here it is. We offer it up on a silver platter, and then you just modify this to what works for you and your school and your region with the way that you teach, and then you just springboard yourself ahead by probably 4 or 5 years, because there's a lot of schools that in the actual day-to-day running, they're there. A lot of teachers are there before 8 in the morning. They're leaving after 5. They've got all of the sports elements that they do as well, the mental well-being of kids, the problematic stuff, the bullying, and all of that takes away from their ability to deliver a change in curriculum and a really good lesson plan that they're going to be able to springboard our kids, which, that's our future, springboard our kids forward to be that intellectual capital for our countries, which are going to springboard us ahead economically. So that's what Luxon does in demanding, that's not going to take 18 months, that's 30 days. Fantastic. I want you to deliver this. And when he finds out that they're not delivering up those lesson plans on a silver platter, he'll be like, why not? Get that done. And that will then just slowly trickle down through the productivity. We've got a big productivity issue in New Zealand at the moment. I don't know how you're going in Australia, but we are distracted by a lack of prioritization and understanding the direction that we're going to go in. And everyone's too scared. When you sort of talk about woke, we're too scared to have a bit of a stand up in a meeting to say, well, actually, I don't think that prioritization is right. I don't think that that solution is good. And then you put a stake in the ground, be prepared to defend it, but also be prepared to take a step back and go, hey, great points. Actually, how do we fold that into our plan? And then we agree to disagree, but the majority rules in this, and this is our plan. Let's forge ahead. So I think that for us, the actions at the top hopefully will filter down, because as you know, and you've alluded to, the words that are being used and the spin doctors that are out there, it doesn't result in action. And when we see action, we get some really great outcomes, and then it becomes self-perpetuating. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and that's right. I guess people to believe and belong to, I reckon, Scotty, is people will jump on board when they see our leaders, be it Donald Trump, be it the good Christopher Luxon, hopefully the current Prime Minister can show some leadership. If not, there's an election coming up as well. The opposition are talking about getting things done, like, nuclear power. But you're right, we're hamstrung by wokeism here. It's something that I know that, is a big talking point in the current US election as well. And I get it. That's each side of politics. But it's how do we, how these things are going to affect Australia and New Zealand, and what we can do ourselves to increase productivity. Getting back to your question a second ago, our productivity is down. It's been going down forever. And talk about education too, mate. Parents are pulling their kids out of schools here because they're over the wokeism. They're over the education system. Teachers are leaving in droves, like you mentioned earlier. They are the bedrock of our society. Teachers, nurses, police. Who'd want to be a policeman? You go to work, you get treated like absolute rubbish. When we were kids, mate, if you mucked around, you get a clip over the ear from the copper. Then you get home, you get one from mum for being disrespectful to the copper, which is how it should be. But then he's saying, crime's out of control. Maybe we can go on and on and on about it. Scotty, I hate to cut you short, mate, but we've got to wrap it up. Anything else you'd like to have a chat about, mate?
Well, I just say, the one thing that sort of pops up is, Australia's been changing its prime ministers. It's been a bit musical chairs. How do you see that, and what's the future look like?
Yeah, so mate, you're right. Ever since John Howard lost office all those years ago, and like I mentioned earlier, we vote governments out in this country. We don't vote them in, and there's great ideas from both sides of politics, and it's a hard balance. It's a very hard balance. We've been obviously fairly a few changes in prime ministers in the last LNP government here. Obviously, Tony Abbott won the race. He was then toppled by Malcolm Turnbull, who was then toppled by Scott Morrison. There was a change of government here at the last election. This particular government, they talked a big game, and this isn't just my opinion. This is the broader opinion. They talked a big game. They're not delivering. I think they will be a one-term government. Any particular, feelings of politics aside, they're not delivering. And yep, they keep talking about the cost of living crisis. Well, there's a cost of spending crisis going on in Canberra at the moment. They're spending it on the wrong things. Now, if there's a change of government, can they do any better? Well, who knows? But they seem to be putting forward better policies, better ideas of how to get the country back on track. The argument then comes back to us, says, well, they had a number of terms to do that last time. And as any government does, they always say, that's politics. They talk about what they can do, if they get elected or re-elected. But, the proof's got to be in the pudding. We've got a big hole to dig ourselves out of here, mate. The Queensland election's coming up, as I mentioned earlier. There's a massive deficit now that's going to be inherited. There will be a change in government. They've got to professionalise the public service in Queensland. They've got to do that in Canberra as well. Take it back to the 1950s where it wasn't overinflated. It wasn't a bloated public service. You had professional people proud of what they're doing good things as well, rather than a place to hide. So, mate, sorry, mate.
Sorry, I think the key is domain experts in those government agencies running those programs, right? So, for argument's sake, a roading engineer in charge of your roading infrastructure, an aviation person in charge of your aviation systems, a health person in charge of your health systems. And that's what used to happen. There used to be good cycling between the two. But, the bog of bureaucracy has frustrated and pushed those good people out. So that's the bit that, you need it to follow up with, right?
Yeah, 100%, mate. And look, we saw it in Canada when Trudeau won office all those years ago. Even at ministerial level, he put a former senior military officer in charge of defence. He put a former senior health practitioner in charge of health. Not saying that they make good politicians, but they understand the system. And you want people to drive any country, especially in a democracy, in a Western democracy, and in the region where we live, people who have that lived experience as well. People who have actually run businesses themselves as well, like, your family. I look at, and again, this isn't necessarily pumping up the tyres of the federal opposition leader, but he was a copper for so many years. He gets real people. He understands the challenges of policing. There's many people that you could point at who have got real life experience, who are now running ministries or who are now senior bureaucrats. We need more of that. We're
lucky in New Zealand, and I think we need to give it a time. But we've got a prime minister who's been a businessman in the States, Johnson & Johnson, and then come back and run the national airline.
Yeah.
Not that that's necessarily a vote of confidence. We've got Dr. Shane Reddy in charge of health. We've got a ex-policeman in charge of police. We're making progress into that, and the thing that is positive for that is they know the right questions to ask, and then they can delve down into the detail and then bring themselves back up. And I think hopefully in 5 to maybe 9 years that we'll see the benefits of that. if they don't get voted out because they're not delivering on the cost of living. But, at the end of the day, that's the juggling act of politicians, right? But domain experience is so important to be cascaded right down through the whole system.
Number one there, Scotty. And mate, look, if we can get all of those aligned, we've got a prosperous region, we've got a safe and secure region, which is what it's all about. But mate, we're going to have to cut it short there. I really appreciate you joining us again today, and let's get together regularly and kick the tin around. And I just had a thought as well. Whilst we might not get on World Bench for the New Zealand rugby team, no Australians, I reckon there might be a few of your cricketers that would definitely be on our run-on side at the moment. You guys are doing so well at the moment over there. But, mate, look forward to catching up for a beer soon.
Hey, look forward to it, and we'll solve some of those big complex problems over those beers. But let's make it a Kiwi beer. You guys can't spell beer with 4X.
But you guys have got the best beer commercials in the world, by the way. Love it. Those Spake commercials from years ago. Anyway.
Yeah. Thank you, mate.
Good on you,
Scotty. Thanks much for having us on. Love what you do, and look forward to catching up soon.
Oh, thanks, mate. Cheers, buddy. All the best.